Greetings hobbyists, this is Arsanzavul, and in this video we're going to have a look at how to make diamond patterned grips. So I've been working on this sci-fi weapon, which is a massive thunder hammer. It's basically a big hammer that has electricity going through it in a sort of force field that makes it even more damaging for the game Warhammer 40,000. And in Warhammer 40,000 it's quite typical to have these stylized diamond patterned grips, just like those that you can see on the screen at the moment. So we're going to have a quick look at how to make something like this in Blender, because in theory it should be simple, but there's actually a few difficulties with this. But once you know some tricks, it's actually pretty easy to do this. So we're going to talk through those, and you don't need any add-ons for this at all. So let's just talk about the basics of this. So there's two main functions here that we're going to use, and if this was a flat surface, so if I just Shift A and bring in a plane and then rotate that on the x-axis by 90 and then make that larger, this would be very easy on a flat object that isn't rounded. All we'd need to do is go into the edges, Shift and E, and then subdivide those edges, bring that up a little bit, something like that. And then if you press F3 and you type poke, you do a function called poke faces, and then F3 again, and we're going to do something called tries to quads. And then you get these diamond shapes that you can then press I to inset. If it's doing this, you just press I again, so it insets them individually, and then you just E to extrude those out. And you've got your diamond pattern. Really, really quick and easy. The problem is this doesn't work on a cylinder, or it doesn't work very well. So if I just press Shift and A and bring in a cylinder, and we're going to bring that down to about 6, normally looks quite good. Scale that up a bit, S and the Z, apply the scale, and we're going to try and do the same thing. So I'm going to go into edge mode, Shift and R to bring in some edge loops, using my mouse wheel to scroll up to somewhere around there-ish, something like that, and then escape to confirm it, and then I'm going to go into face mode, A, and then unselect the top and the bottom, and in theory this should work great. So we just do exactly the same thing, poke the faces with F3, F3 again, and then tries to quads, and yeah, this should work quite nicely, except for now, because we've got these sections that are on the corners, when I press I, it doesn't work very nicely. So we're going to have to come up with a different way of doing this. It's going to use many of the same tools, but it does require a few additional steps, but they're not actually that difficult. So let's go into front view, and we're going to start this process. So Shift A, and we are going to bring in a cylinder again. So we've got something like that. And I'm probably going to start the process here, and then I can modify it later based on the size that I want things for my object. So let's just zoom in here. I'm going to go into edge mode. I'm going to press Control and R to put an edge loop, click, and then right click to confirm that, and it'll go straight to the center. And then I'm going to go into face mode, press A to select all the faces, and then Shift select the top and the bottom face. We don't want those involved. We need to poke faces again. You can just press F3, or you can go to face and then poke face. And then we want to turn the triangles into quads again. Again, you can press F3, or you can go to tries to quads. Apparently you can also press Alt J to do that, which I didn't realize. Let me just test that out. Yeah, there you go, that works. So you can just Alt J as well. And at this point, we're going to select some of these diamonds to use. So I'm going to go to face, select that diamond, and then Shift select each of the diamonds. And notice I'm selecting the ones that are whole diamonds on the flat face. And then I'm going to press P and separate by selection. So now we can delete this. We've just got our diamonds that we want. And at this point, I'm going to start fiddling around with the size of these diamonds. So let's G and Z that up, which is going to cause me some problems later because we're going to need to move things around, but I'll deal with that then. And I'm going to make sure these are basically small enough on my X and Y. So effectively, I need this smaller than the diameter of this. In fact, it should be quite a bit smaller, so that's probably about right. But I do want these to be longer, so I'm going to S and Z something about like that. So they have a little bit more of a diamond shape as opposed to a square turned slightly on its side. Then I'm going to go to face mode, A to select all of them, I to inset a bit, probably somewhere about there is going to leave sufficient gap. And then I'm going to go into vertex mode. I'm using machine tools to go into vertex mode. It's one of the Pi menus. Machine tools is a free add-on, so it's quite useful to be able to do that. If not, you can change things by going into the top left-hand corner or pressing 1, 2, and 3. And then I'm going to press Control and I to invert my selection and delete the vertices. So we've only got these triangles with the gaps in between them. Then back into face mode, A to select everything, And now I want to expand these out. So what I'm going to do, just to demonstrate what I'm doing, is come into the view from the bottom, and we're going to make these larger. Now, if I press Alt and E and extrude along normals, what that will do is that's going to go out there, which is fine, except for it leaves a really big gap between the diamonds, and we don't want that. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to press E to extrude them, then escape, so that the faces are basically left where they were originally, so it looks like nothing's happened. And I'm going to press S to scale these out. Now at the moment, this is going to scale them on all axes. I don't want that. So we're just going to press S and then Shift and Z so that it scales in everything but the Z axis. And importantly, I'm going to take this a bit further than I want them, and you'll see why later. So this is going further than the handle is going to be. And you'll notice that this means that there's less of a gap. So you'll notice as we move out now, this gap and this gap aren't much larger. If you do want that to be perfect, you can just change our transformation point to individual origins, and then you can press S, Shift and Z again, and then you'll notice that it moves them out. So we could change it to about there. But it's very important to keep pressing the Shift and Z so we're not changing anything on the Z axis. Everything is the same size. So we've got that there. Now you'll notice that this does distort things on this one that's further out quite a lot. So you do need to bear that in mind as well. So for example, I might go into this whole thing and then S and Z to get that to where I want it to be, something around there. And then importantly, Control and A, and we're going to apply the scale. If we don't apply the scale, you're going to have a lot of problems later on with what we do next. So make sure you apply the scale. So next we need to create all the additional diamonds that we want. And normally we'd do this with an array. So if I just add modifier an array, we want to change that from the X. We want this to be on the Z. So we could do something like that, but the problem is, well, it's leaving a hole. We need a diamond there in the center of each of these, so it's not going to work very well. So we don't want to be using this relative offset. Instead, we're going to use object offset. What that does is it means we can put an object in place, and anything we do to that object is what's going to happen to the array. You'll see how this works in a second. It's really helpful. So the first thing we want to do is we want our cursor to be up here, which will make everything easier to sort of manipulate. So what I'm going to do is select this and then go to Object, Snap, and then Cursor to Selected. If you've got machine tools, it's much easier. Again, just Shift and S, and then you can do Cursor to Selected, so it makes it much easier. And then Shift and A, and I'm going to bring in an empty. And I'm just going to use the plane axes because I prefer them, and we can see that there in the middle. Now clicking back on my diamonds, I want to have an object offset. I'm going to drop that down. Let's get rid of the relative offset, and I need to select my object, so I'm going to select my empty. You can also just click there and find wherever your empty is, but I've got lots of other things in this file, so it's a bit complicated, so I'm just going to click on my empty. And now anything I do to my empty is going to affect this one array that we've got. So we've got count of 2, which means we've got our original and our extra one. So if I, for example, G and Z, you can see that's doing the same thing to my new set. So everything I do to this empty is going to affect the new set of diamonds. So bear in mind that I want this to be rotated around a bit. If I just press R and Z, I can rotate it in the Z, and it's going to do it for the next ones. Now, I'm not going to try and work this out by eye. I'm just going to click this rotate angle just once again. If you press R and Z and rotate it around however much, it comes up with the information of what you've done. You might have this small box here. You just click there to get more details. And as long as you've not clicked anything, I can click on this angle and change it. And I want, well, this to be half one of my diamonds. And if we quickly double check, we've got 6 diamonds in each row, and I need to move them around half. So I'm going to double the 6 to be 12. So 360 divided by 12. And we've got that halfway. And then I can select my empty again, come into front view, and then G and Z that up. So I've got approximately the gap that I want. Something about there. And then if I just click on my diamonds again, anytime I up my count, it's just going to add an extra set. So I just need to have a look and think, well, how many of these do I want? I want something like there. That's the length that I want my handle to be. Again, notice that it's slightly wider than we want it to be. That's perfectly intentional. Now at this point, if we zoom in, we will notice there's a problem with our diamonds. So if I just come in here, you can see that we've got this almost edge, this slight highlight there because I've got cavity on. If you don't have cavity, if you come here in matcap and click on cavity, it will give this more exaggerated effect. There's a link to a video on that in the top right hand corner if you want to see it how I do that. But this is actually showing us that while Blender believes this is flat, it's not. And in fact, this is actually a slight issue with Blender. If I press N and go into my 3D print toolbox, if you don't have that, it's really useful for 3D printing. Just go to Edit, Preferences, and then just type in 3D dash, and you've got 3D print toolbox. And if I click on this and click check all, it's showing that there's no non-flat faces, even though we can blatantly see that there are. So yeah, this isn't perfect. It does a very good job, to be perfectly fair, but in this, it just doesn't seem to be able to work this out. So we need to make sure that Blender fixes this, and we can do that relatively easily. All we've got to do is just put in an edge. If I go into vertex mode, everywhere there should be one. So I can go there, and then press J to put in an edge. Now, that is going to take forever. To do that for 4 faces on each of these diamonds, then do it for every single one. I mean, I guess we could have done this before we did the array, but we really don't need to. If we just go into object mode, add modifier, and triangulate, and it should automatically be on these settings. So shortest diagonal, beauty, and then 4 for the minimum vertices. If it's not, just change it to that, and then you click apply all, and you can see what this has done is that has done our work for us. It's also put an edge on this face here, but that's not a problem. It's not going to cause us any issues. So now we need to deal with the fact that this will, I mean, it looks horrible. It's got all these bits sticking out. It's not very nice. It's not a particularly rounded handle. So let's deal with that. The first thing to do, though, is to go into vertex mode. And I sometimes find an issue with this triangulation. It might not even be the triangulation. It just might be something weird that happens. But if you press A, M, and then merge by distance, no, I haven't actually deleted any vertices, but it's always worth doing that. Just check that we're not going to have any problems. And then I'm going to press Shift and A, and I'm going to mesh and bring in a cylinder. And this cylinder is going to have, well, 6 edges, because that's what we used last. I want this much more rounded, so I'm going to go to 128. I mean, that's going to be very rounded. You could do this less than this. You could do something like 64, but regardless, whatever your computer will take is fine. And then I'm just going to press S, and I'm going to expand this out to be as close to the edge of the diamonds as possible, which is going to give a slightly better result. Do not go further. Anything like that, and this is going to look a little bit rough, so as close as you can get while still having a bit of distance. And then we want to G and Z and move that down, and I want this so that it's only going to have half of the top set of diamonds, and the same for the bottom. I've already got my snapping turned on. If you don't, come to this top symbol here and click on it so that you've got snapping, and then you want to come here and go to vertex, and what that will mean is when I go into edge mode and press Alt and select the top edge, it's going to be able to snap to any vertex that we put our mouse over. So if I press G and Z, we move it up, but as soon as I come to a vertex, like the one on these corners, it's going to snap to that height, which is exactly where we want it. And I'm going to do the same for the bottom, so Alt select the bottom edge, and then come all the way down here, G and Z, and then we've got that snapped there. Then we're going to use Boolean. I'm going to use Ball Tools to make my life faster. If you go to Edit, Preferences, if you haven't got this already, go to Add-ons and type in Ball. You'll get an add-on called Ball Tool. Make sure you've clicked that and click Save Preferences. And then all you need to do is have your cylinder selected, Shift select your diamonds, and then press Control and your star on your number pad, which would normally do multiplication. If you don't have a number pad, you can do this traditional method by adding modifier Boolean, click intersection, and then clicking on the object. It just takes a bit longer, and then I'm just going to H to hide that cylinder, and you'll see we've got this really nice rounded looking set of diamonds. Now at this point, I'm going to apply these, and I'm going to have a look at how wide this is. So let's come to here, and then let's S to scale, Shift to Z so it doesn't scale on the Z axis, and I'm going to put that to about there. Let's have a look. Yeah, somewhere around there looks about right. Then we need something for the diamonds to connect to. At the moment it's, well, floating in midair. So I'm going to Shift A and once again bring in a cylinder. This one does not need to be as high in terms of your number of vertices. I'm going to bring this down to 32. And then so that we've got a reliable print, I probably don't want this offset being that much. So I'm going to go to somewhere around there. Something that we should be able to see and notice, but nothing that's going to be too large. And then I can just SZ to scale in the Z axis and somewhere around there. At this point, the final features are easy to do. I might bring in another cylinder. Let's put that up to 64. Scale that up. S and Z on the Z axis, so we've got a little bit of extra width. G and Z, oh, let's turn off snapping. G and Z to there. Control and A, apply the scale, go into edge mode. Shift select each edge, Control and B to bevel it, and then up that bevel to somewhere around there. Looks alright. And then Shift and D and Z and bring that down to the bottom. And then I might want something finally on the end here. Actually, I'll leave that like that for now. And that gives us our diamond texture handle. Obviously this still needs to be boolean together, but it will boolean together fine because of the fact we've triangulated all of the sides of the diamonds, and then it's ready for 3D printing. If you found that video useful, please do hit the like button, and as always, if you're not subscribed, do subscribe to the channel for more great content. Have a great day, guys.